Hello, y'all. This is Jimmy Cultist, back again with another logic video. Today's subject matter is how to mess with the brightness and volume in-game, like how to change those settings, and I'll show you how to do it. First, you're going to want a microchip where you're going to put all of your lighting and sun and sky effects. I've called this microchip World Settings, and you could just stamp it out. I don't think its orientation really matters. And I put grade and effects in here, which controls, these are basically external effects like, bloom and, film grain, things like that, color saturation. That's all grade and effects is. I've also put out sun and sky, which controls the sunlight. We're not really going to be messing with that, but usually I tend to put it in here too. And I've put out some ambient sound effects of a beach to make it feel like we're near the coast. And because I want to demonstrate how to do audio, filtering or whatever. Don't pay attention to the keyframe, it's not really necessary. I've also put out a piece of music published by one of my favorite musicians, ElDavisimo. He does work on multiple of my games. It's set to loop, but I'm using it as a demonstration of how audio mixing works. And one thing I'd like to talk about concerning audio is if you double tap on all these, once they're all selected, if you press X twice, double tap, then press L1 and square, you can mess with them all at once. But the most important setting that I want to look at today is at the very end here. You can pick a channel for these things to be registered as, and of course they're registered as music, which is very helpful for audio balancing, but later on it's going to be more helpful. I'm just establishing the rules early before we start. Next, stamp out a microchip. We're going to call it Settings. Inside, put a controller sensor and set it to Remote Controllable, and delete the circle. If usually they come prepackaged with circle connected to depossess, just go ahead and get rid of that. Next, I want to stamp out a microchip, which we have named D-pad. And in here, I've put several nodes, which are going to act as ports for these various outputs from the controller sensor, like the up button, the down button, and the left button, and the right button on the D-pad. Now, it might get a little confusing. I've connected the up button to up on this lower one, and I've connected the down button to down, so these are up and down, and these are right and left. However, I've kept them labeled up and down for a good reason. I will explain it later. The left button is down, which in this case would be negative or back. And the right button is up, which is positive forward, essentially. Positive and negative. For, easy reference. Also below, I've placed a selector, and I've connected the touchpad output to this arrow so that we can toggle it off and on. And I've taken out a little text displayer, which I've used MM's handy UI system, in case you're interested in how it works. Just type out these arrows, then put touchpad. There's a site called In Dreams Me. Go to icons and you can find out about all these different available prompts and icons that you can use. But I'm just demonstrating that real quick before we get started. But all you're going to want to do is to connect A to this. It's basically going to act as a display for our player so that they know when the menu can be, how it can be opened and all that sort of thing. And then you're going to stamp out this settings menu, which we're going to leave powered on. And then we're going to go in here and stamp out a master mixer. This controls the audio channels I was mentioning earlier. We'll come back to it later. Next, stamp out 2 variables. They can be set to persist in Dream, in which case if you copy this system to another scene or another level, if they're persistent, their settings will remain persistent in the next level, which may be useful if you want to do that, but we'll get down to business. I've set their maximum value to 100 and the initial value to 50%, and that's basically normal settings. I've set it, and I've labeled one world settings, and the other... Wait a minute, they're both world settings? That's not right. Just a moment. This one should be labeled Music Settings. I'm not sure how they both got labeled that way, but whatever. But they're basically the same. We might relabel this to Brightness Settings. World Settings is a bit odd. But next, I've stamped out a calculator, and I've set it to division. It divides by 100, and we're taking the current value and putting it in the A port of this calculator. So it will divide the total of this variable by 100. And I've got a timeline here, set to sustain, and I have connected the result of our calculator to the playhead, meaning that it's exactly in the middle, because half of 100 is 50. That's why we set the initial value to 50. And on either side, we've got a keyframe set to sustain. You may also notice we've got a keyframe on this end, and I'm going to talk about what these do. Now, if we go back to our grade and effects over here, I've turned down the brightness to negative 200%. So this would be turning the brightness to its lowest setting, and this would be turning the brightness to its highest setting, which is positive 200%, or just 200%. And of course, in the music settings, I've done the same. The only difference is I've affected this music channel, setting it to negative 100% and positive 100% on this end. And you could conceivably control every audio channel this way, as long as you create new menus and new variables to control them. If they're set to persist, though, they will weigh on your variable count, so keep that in mind. Your variable count decides how much stuff can be persistent in a dream. So if you want them to be constant, like once they're changed, they stay that way throughout every scene, just keep that in mind. You will need to stamp the system into every scene also, just to remind you. But let's get down to business. Now that we've covered the groundwork, I'm going to put out a chip, and we're going to call it HUD, and I've set a custom icon, just to kind of help it stand out more. And inside this microchip, we've got several different things, but I'm going to get down to them. First, we have a text displayer, which creates a menu background. I've set it to sort order 30. And the settings are mostly just, you know, visual dressing and such. They're not really super important. I guess if we want to talk about menu design, that's a subject for a separate video. And I've got 2 text displayers displaying brightness and music. And if you want to open these up, you just press L1 and square, and you can move them with R2, you know, and change their settings in this menu. You know, like the opacity and the brightness. And I've got two values on either side, represented by number displayers, which number displayers can be found here, in case you're interested. Oops. I've also got this, which is a action recorder set to loop. Make sure that when you stamp out the action recorder, it's also set to keyframe mode. You won't need to move its playhead at all, it's just going to control this fellow's properties. Now what I've done with him is I've shut off his puppet interface, which will make him unable to jump, turn, or move. I've also shut off these control prompts. They're not really being used for anything, I'm just using them as a way to demonstrate. Say if you connected triangle to an action that we had in a separate chip, you could just turn off this chip entirely to prevent, you know, these controls from being pressed when you're opening the settings menu. I don't turn off the controller sensor because if you do, the character, his imp will pop out, and it's a little bit immersion breaking for that. So I leave it on, and I've just set the other controller to remote controllable so that it can do all the functions we need. I've also set his health manager damage multiplier to 0% so that if he was being attacked by enemies, they wouldn't be able to do anything to him during this state, like he's paused. We may talk about how to create paused mechanics in other regards later, but for now, that's all you need to know. We're turning off his control outputs and making it so he can't move. And make sure the power is on. I know you can't really tell because this chip is currently powered off by a selector. I might just add a switch right now so that we can demonstrate what it's like when it's powered on. But yeah, make sure it's on. Then stamp out another selector, and we are going to connect up and down on the D-pad to this selector. Up will go in the next output port, and down, of course, will go in the previous output port. And I've also put a text displayer similar to this one, only I've upped the brightness a bit so it'll show up more. And it just tells us that we can exit by pressing the same prompt that we use to open the settings menu, which is the touchpad. Anyway, now we can get down to the meat. The selector connects to two chips, which I have labeled math. It connects to their power, to be precise, which you can access by opening it with L1 in square and connecting the power of B to this. It's as simple as pressing X and connecting it with X. But let's get into what the math chips actually do. And to start with, we're going to go back here, and this is our right and left D-pad outputs from the controller sensor. I've made it so that right goes to this variable modifier, to the power that is. I've set it to continuously while powered, and I've set it to add operation value 0.2, which is quite slow, but I want it to be that way. And for left, I've copied the same variable, which is set to brightness, by the way. Make sure you get that right. It will affect this variable permanently if you set it to persist in Dream. But whatever value it chooses is going to cause the playhead on this timeline to move up and down, thus altering the brightness. And they're both set to 0.2. The difference is this one is negative 0.2, and this one is positive. And by the way, if you want to set exact values, just press L1 and square, and this little menu will pop up. It's a little bit easier than using the slider, in case you're interested. And you may have noticed these weird timers I've got on either side. Timers set to positional. 1.0 seconds is the target time, and you may be wondering what they do. Well, I've connected the outputs of both these nodes to the start timer port. And here you'll see these two keyframes called speed. And all speed does is when you hold the button down, this timer will go up. So if you're holding right on the D-pad, the timer will go up and gradually power this keyframe on. And what it does is it increases the amount by which you're adding or subtracting the brightness. So, you know, if you don't want to take a long time, tap, 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 you know, trying to up the brightness, just hold down on the arrow and it will start to, you know, speed up the process. And I've, you know, upped it, I've doubled it to 0.8, which will be quite fast when operable. And for the other one, I've set it to negative 0.8, of course. I've also got this little keyframe in the middle here, which all it does is light up our selection. So brightness, we're going to turn the text brightness up to 20%. And what we've got going on in the music chip is exactly the same. Like, this will alter the music variable, but it's pretty much the same. And of course, it ups the brightness on the music text displayer to show that we've selected it for the player's benefit. Now let's go ahead and test all of this in action. Oh, I forgot. Get rid of this switch, it's not necessary. I only had it for testing purposes. Now let's go ahead and alter the music. Something seems to be wrong. I bet I know what it is. It's because we relabeled these music settings and brightness settings. Make sure that they're properly labeled. I forgot to do that. And these ones we're going to call brightness settings. But as you can see, we can tap the right, I should say the left arrow. Tap the left arrow and it turns down the music. And you can actually hear the music getting lower. And I'm going to demonstrate what it looks like in the logic. See, the playhead is moving down, and the variable is at, well, it's at 22.76. And the master mixer is at negative 54%. And if we hold it down, it will drastically reduce, you know, the speed will increase. But if you just tap the arrow, it'll go slower. It'll be like 1, 2, you know, slow. But if you hold it down, it's very loud. We don't want it that loud. We can also alter the brightness. Let's make sure that we've set those variables properly, though. Brightness settings. I think I did reset them. Except you'll notice we made a little mistake. This is lowercase s, whereas we've set this to uppercase. Don't make that mistake. Make sure that they're the right case. Otherwise it won't work properly. There we go. And when we close the menu, the settings will remain as they were. If you stamp this system into multiple scenes, it will work and persist within the dream, especially if you set the variables to persist in dream, as I showed you earlier. And if you do, by any chance, want to save this, it's as simple as tapping X and pressing this little Save as New Creation button. And in here you'll see a list of things you could save it as. I would probably save it as a contraption, but yeah, that's how you can do that. Anyway, hopefully you found this helpful in case you're trying to create your own settings menu, you know, in-game for whatever creation you might be currently working on. Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. That's all for now. Goodbye.